and welcome back to another Money Tip Monday. Today we're going to be talking all about interest. Now, you might remember a couple weeks back, I did a video with my good friend Javier all about the velocity banking strategy. And since we've made both of those videos, I have read comment after comment about compound interest versus simple interest and do you know the math? And I have to be honest, at first I was a little offended, then I was like, well, how do I respond to this? And I really just felt that it was important for me to make a video to help all of my followers understand the differences between each type of interest, what type of interest is paid on lines of credit versus credit cards versus mortgages, and how this can work for you in terms of debt consolidation, and then also how it can work for you in investments. So before we get into all of that though, I do need to ask a favor. Please like, comment, and subscribe to this awesome video and the channel so you can receive more Money Tip Mondays. One thing I do want to say that I did not, I think, make clear enough in my last video is that I do believe that the velocity banking strategy works. It can help you pay off debt and it can help you pay off a large mortgage debt. Now, I think where it got a little controversial is that I don't believe that you need a line of credit to do it. I think that if a responsible person has an emergency fund where they've collected their own savings account, they should feel comfortable applying all of their disposable, income in their bank after all of their expenses to principal reductions on high interest debt and their mortgage. Okay? Now, in case of an emergency though, then they can tap into that emergency fund savings account versus a line of credit. Because in my opinion, when you give people access to more credit, one, they're going to spend it, and two, if they need it in case of an emergency, chances are they're not going to be able to repay it fast enough, and so then they'll have to pay interest on their emergency and then possibly their next month's household expenses. So for me, does the concept work? Absolutely. It's not my favorite method. Now to get into the different types of interest. So a lot of the debate was on simple interest versus compound interest. Now, line of credits use simple interest method, which means that you only pay interest on the balance owed and the interest only payment is due every single month. So you only pay interest on what you take out and no interest accrues. Now, compound interest is very different and is like literally the eighth wonder of the world thanks to Einstein. And honestly, it's like also a weapon of mass destruction when it comes to debt. So people are very, very against this. And when you use this term and describe it and put mortgages into that category, I understand why people get like violently emotional, right? So let me explain to you. Compound interest is when you borrow on something, the interest accrues, the minimum payment doesn't cover the interest. So then next month's balance, you're now paying interest on the original balance plus the interest, right? So every single month you're adding to your balance, right? It's growing and growing if you only make minimum payments. Now, many credit cards are this way, many student loans are this way, but mortgages, a 30-year fixed mortgage, is not compound interest. A mortgage is similar to simple interest, but it really qualifies under fixed amortized. And what that means is a percentage of your payment goes to principal and interest, and you only pay interest on the balance that's owed every single month. The thing is that it's scheduled out for a term, let's say for instance, in this case, 30 years. Now on a fixed rate mortgage, that interest is set. On an adjustable rate mortgage, that will fluctuate with the market. But essentially, you're only paying interest on the current balance owed once a month. Now, the reason that this is not compound interest is because compounding interest means that that balance would then have interest on top of that, and that's what you'd be paying. On a mortgage, what happens is that with each payment, you actually compound your principal reduction. So more of your principal is paid every month and less interest. So over the course of your term, less interest, more principal. It's actually the opposite of compound interest. It's like compound principal reduction. Now, I think the reason that it gets so confusing is because when you pay interest over a term, let's say 30 years, the cost of the house is typically double, right? And that's just because you're paying interest on a balance for an extended period of time, like 30 years. It's not because it compounds, it's just because you've paid interest for a really long time. Now, ways to avoid that are, again, principal reduction, so that you reduce the number of payments, so you accelerate, the principal that goes to your property, right? That's one way. Again, like I said in the previous video, most people will sell their home after 10 years, so they'll never incur that cost. But those are the ways that you get ahead, right, with a mortgage. But it is false to think that it compounds interest. Now, you may be wondering who benefits from a simple interest loan versus a compound interest loan, and what type of loans qualify under each. Now, I will tell you that every single type of loan is different, and you need to read your loan terms to figure out which one is which. But simple interest loans accrue interest daily, and they benefit people who make their payments early. The earlier you make your payment, the less interest you pay, and then you only pay the minimum payment that's due is the total interest of the month, so it never accrues to the next month. Now, the types of loans that qualify for simple interest are typically your short-term loans, so personal lines of credit, home equity lines of credit, and some auto loans, because the interest is accrued daily, okay? So that's like the big key indicator is interest is accrued daily and minimum interest payments are due each month. Compound interest loans are very different. So in a compound interest situation, the balance carries forward with interest every single month. And so your balance is constantly growing because the minimum payment due does not cover the minimum interest. Big culprits of this are credit cards and student loans. Student loans are probably the worst of all of the types of loans because typically, unless they're subsidized by the government, they start accruing interest from day one of disbursement. And then because people don't and can't afford to pay throughout college, those balances rack up over time. And that's why people will start with an educational loan of $15,000 and end up with one that's $30,000, depending on how long they go to school. It's crazy. And the same thing with a 14%, or 22% credit card payment. I mean, I see people, honestly, on a mortgage basis that have those credit cards literally for years and will pay like $200 to $300 and won't be paying any of the principal balance off. So it is incredibly awful, and the only people who benefit from compound interest are banks and/or investors, right? So if you're doing an investment, right, if you're loaning your money and the feature has compound interest, so this would be like a CD or a mutual fund or an annuity, this would benefit you, right? So when it comes to investments, you want to look for compound interest. When it comes to loans, you want to look for fixed, amortized, or simple interest. Now, I hope this was a really great explanation for you guys on the difference between what simple interest is versus what compound interest is, and why mortgages are similar to simple interest but are fixed amortized, right? And how this benefits you as a consumer, and then how you can use these strategies to help with making more money in investments or getting your debt paid down quicker. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to this awesome Money Tip Monday channel.